Okay, so this story is a Russian legend. It comes to us from the country of Russia, which is to the east of us. And it's called The Sea King's Daughter. Now, what I love about this retelling is that the illustrations in it are, oh my gosh, they're just beautiful. So the illustrator, who is the person who, that's right, draws the pictures, is Gennady Spirin, and they are, like I said, they are just lovely. So this is a story that is filled with adventure. It's just, this is a really cool story. Okay, here is The Sea King's Daughter, a Russian legend, retold by Shepard, illustrated by Gennady Spirin. And I love when we have these multicultural stories where in the beginning they kind of help you to pronounce some of the words. Sometimes there's a glossary in the back that will tell you if there's a word in a different language, what it means. Long ago, in the riverport city called Novgorod the Great, there lived a young musician called Sadko. Every day a rich merchant or noble would send a messenger to Sadko's door calling him to play at a feast. Sadko would grab his 12-string gusli and rush to the banquet hall. There he would pluck the strings of his instrument till all the guests were dancing. Eat your fill, the host would tell him later, pointing to the table and passing him a few small coins besides. And on such as he was given did Sadko live. Often his friends would ask him, "How can you survive on so little?" "It is not so bad," Sadko would reply. "And how many men can go to a different feast each day, play the music they love, and watch it set a whole room dancing?" So this is his instrument here, gusli. It's kind of like a guitar. You can see he's playing the strings, but it lays flat, and you pluck the strings. These are the pictures I love, though. The double page paintings. Aren't they beautiful? Sadko was proud of his city, the richest and most free in all Russia. He would walk through the busy market square lined with merchants in their stalls and teeming with traders from many lands. He never crossed the square without hearing tongues of far-off places, from Italy to Norway to Persia. Down in the piers he would see the sailing ships with their cargoes of lumber and grain, hides, pottery, spices, and precious metals. Crossing the great bridge over the river Volkhov, Sadko would catch the glint from the gilded roofs of a dozen white stone churches. "Is there another such city as Novgorod in all the world?" he would say. "Is there any better place to be?" Yet sometimes Sadko was lonely. The maidens who danced gaily at his music at the feasts would often smile at him. More than one had set his heart on fire, but they were rich, and he was poor, and not one of them would think of being his. One lonely evening, Sadko walked sadly beyond the city walls and down along the broad river Volkhov. He came to his favorite spot on the bank, and he set his gusli on his lap. Gentle waves brushed the shore, and moonlight shimmered on the water. "My lovely river Volkhov," he said with a sigh. "Rich man, poor man, it's all the same to you. If only you were a woman, I'd marry you and live with you here in the city I love." Sadko plucked a sad tune, and then a peaceful one, and then a merry one. The tinkling notes of his gusli floated over the Volkhov. All at once the river grew rough, and strong waves began to slap the bank. "Heaven help me!" cried Sadko, as a large shape rose from the water. Before him stood a huge man with a pearl-encrusted crown atop a flowing mane of seaweed. "Musician," said the man, "behold the king of the sea. To this river I have come to visit one of my daughters, the Princess Volkova. Your sweet music reached us on the river bottom, where it pleased us greatly." "Thank you, your majesty," stammered Sadko. "Soon I will return to my own palace," said the king. "I wish you to play there at a feast." "Gladly," said Sadko, "but where is it? And how do I get there?" "Why, under the sea, of course. I'm sure you'll find your way, but meanwhile you need not wait for your reward. Something large jumped from the river and flopped at Sadko's feet, a fish with golden scales. As Sadko watched in amazement, it stiffened and turned to solid gold. Your Majesty, you're too generous. Say no more about it, said the king. Music is worth far more than gold. If the world were fair, you'd have your fill of riches. And with a splash, he sank in the river and was gone. There he is, the king of the sea. The next morning, Sadko arrived at the market square just as the stalls were opening. He quickly sold the golden fish to an astonished merchant, and then, hurrying to the piers, he booked his passage on a ship leaving Novgorod that very day. Down the Volkhov, the ship sailed, across Lake Ladoga, into the Gulf of Finland, and into the Baltic Sea. As it sped above the deep waters, Sadko peered over the rail. In all the wide sea, he murmured, how can I ever find the palace? Just then, the ship shuddered to a halt. The wind filled the sails, and yet the ship stood still, as if a giant hand had grasped it. Some of the sailors cursed in fear, while others prayed for their lives. It must be the king of the sea, the captain cried. Perhaps he seeks tribute, or someone among us. Don't be troubled, called Sadko. I know the one he seeks. And clutching his gusli, he climbed the railing. Stop him, shouted the captain. But before any could lay hold of him, Sadko jumped from the ship and plunged below the waves. There he is with his gusli, jumping over the edge of the ship and into the water.
Are they bad?
Nope. He's just going down to play music for the Sea King.
Why do they sing with music?
Because the Sea King loves the music. Down sank Sadko, down all the way to the sea floor. The red sun shone dimly through the water above, while before him stood a white stone palace. Sadko passed through a coral gate. As he reached the huge palace doors, they swung open to reveal a giant hall. The elegant room was filled with guests and royal attendants, herring and sprats and cod and flounder, gobies and sticklebacks and eels and sea scorpions, crabs and lobsters, starfish and squid and sea turtles, and giant sturgeon. Those are all different kinds of fish, in case you were wondering, my friends. Standing among the guests were dozens of maidens, river nymphs, the Sea King's daughters. On a shell throne at the end of the hall sat the Sea King and his queen. So here's all some of the different kinds of fish that were there. And you got to keep your Legos quiet for a little while, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And there's the river nymphs. And there's the Sea King. And here comes Sadko with his gusli. You're just in time, called the king. Brody, no Legos right now, honey. I need you to wait, okay? You're just in time, called the king. Musician, come sit by me and let the dance begin. Sadko set his gusli on his lap and plucked a merry tune. Soon all the fish swam in graceful figures. The sea floor crawlers cavorted. The river maidens leaped and spun. I like that tune, declared the king. He jumped to the center of the hall and joined the dance. His arms waved, his robes swirled, his hair streamed, his feet stamped. Faster, cried the king. Play faster! Sadko played faster, and the king's dance grew wilder. All the others stopped and watched in awe. Ever more madly did he move, whirling faster and leaping higher and stamping harder. The Sea Queen whispered urgently to Sadko, Musician, end your tune. It seems to you the king merely dances in his hall, but above us the sea is tossing ships like toys, and giant waves are breaking on the shore. So there's the king dancing And the maidens are telling Sadko that while the king is dancing, the ocean is going bananas up above. And it's causing all kinds of trouble for sailors and for the shores. Big sea storm. That's what's happening with the king. Alarmed, Sadko pulled a string until it snapped. "Your Majesty, my goosely is broken." "A shame," said the Sea King, winding to a stop. "I could have danced for days. But a fine fellow you are, Sadko. I think I'll marry you to one of my daughters and keep you here forever." "Your Majesty," said Sadko carefully, "beneath the sea your word is law, but this is not my home. I love my city of Novgorod." "Say no more about it," roared the king. "Prepare to choose your bride. Daughters, come forth." The river maidens passed in parade before Sadko. Each was more lovely than the one before, but Sadko's heart was heavy. He barely looked at them. "What's wrong, musician?" said the king merrily. "Too hard to choose? Then I'll wed you to the one who fancies you. Behold the Princess Volkova." The princess stepped forward. Her green eyes were sparkling, and a soft smile graced her lips. "Dearest Sadko, at last we can be together. For years you have thrilled to the music you've played on the shore." "Volkova," said Sadko in wonder. "You're as lovely as your river." But the sea queen leaned over and said softly, "You are a good man, Sadko, so I will tell you the truth. If you but once kiss or embrace her, you can never return to your city again." Hey. No, thank you. No, thank you. What would library be without interruptions to the story, right, my friends? Please. And there they are. The king and Sadko. And there is the Princess Volkova. That night, Sadko lay beside his bride on a bed of seaweed. "She's so lovely," thought Sadko, "so charming, all I ever hoped for. How can I not hold her?" But time after time, the queen's words came back to him. "Never return to your city again." And his arms stay frozen at his sides. "Dearest," asked the princess, "why do you not embrace me?" "It is the custom of my city," Sadko stammered. "We never kiss or embrace on the first night." "Then I fear you never will," she said sadly, and she turned away. When Sadko awoke the next morning, he felt sunlight on his face. He opened his eyes and saw beside him not the Princess Volkova, but the river Volkhov. And behind him rose the walls of Novgorod. "My home," said Sadko, and he wept, perhaps for joy at his return, perhaps for sadness at his loss, perhaps for both. There he is, and there's his river, and there's his broken goosely next to him. The years were good to Sadko. With the money that remained to him, he bought a ship and goods enough to fill it, and so Sadko became a merchant, and in time the richest man in Novgorod. What's more, he married a fine young woman and raised a family. Many a feast he would hold so he could play his goosely and watch his children dance. Yet sometimes, still on a quiet evening, he would walk out of the city alone, sit on a bank, and send his tinkling music over the water. And sometimes, too, a lovely head would rise from the river to listen. Or perhaps it was only the moonlight on the Volkhov. Or was it the Princess Volkova? And that was our story from Russia.